Welcome to the Numbers Game. I'm Cynthia Frelund, and I'm so grateful that you're choosing to spend some of your time and energy with me yet again this week. Overall, I think the every game in 30-ish minutes format works well, but I did make a few tweaks to this week's show, because who doesn't love a few extra little knowledge nuggets in the form of lists here and there? As a reminder, I'll give you at least one fact, like an advanced stat or a next-gen stat, for every single team. Maybe a matchup note, an overall trend, maybe where a tendency could be busted, something that stands out as an important factor, basically why through the lens of predictive metrics that leads us down the path of solving the puzzle that is the game. Then I'll tell you what my slightly aggressive 1 million simulations of every game reveal, along with what my model's confidence level is. The Chargers stayed out east for a second matchup in the Eastern time zone, this time against the Pittsburgh Steelers. On LA's side of the ball, I'm not going to talk about J.K. Dobbins. I'm just going to let his 9.9 yard per carry average speak for itself. I know that a blowout has noisy data, but Justin Herbert was nearly perfect against the Panthers when passing from a clean pocket, going 13 of 14 for 115 and 2 touchdowns. By the way, a clean pocket is basically a proxy for the best you can do. However, against pressure, things were different. 1 of 6 for 15 yards and an interception. Just as a note here, both of his touchdown passes targeted Quentin Johnston on downfield attempts, so 10 plus air yards. So things are getting deeper over there. On Pittsburgh's side, let's keep the quarterback theme going. Justin Fields' blitz production is a source of success for him as a Steeler. He ranks 12th best against the blitz, 68.4% completion percentage, which is great. 9.3 passes over expected, which is 5th. And by the way, considering he's been blitzed at the second highest rate so far, those numbers are even better. Just as a note, last year he was blitzed the most and completed 58.1% of passes, which ranks 25th. Bottom line, 2 key drivers here. The first is that the Chargers rookie right tackle Joe Alt will face off against the Steelers star edge defender TJ Watt. Alt has been great. He's only allowed 4 pressures on 51 pass blocking snaps, but it's Watt. And he's had 3 pressures in each game so far. Advantage veteran in this matchup. And the other driver is that despite Fields having some maybe not as good data against zone coverages, the Chargers do use it at the second highest rate, but they haven't been effective at stopping quarterbacks when using it. They have the 5th lowest success rate, which tips the scales in favor of the Steelers. Then go one step further and factor in that the Steelers have run the ball more than any other team this year. And you see how the weight of the Chargers' vulnerability looms slightly larger. Final score, we got another 22 here. Pittsburgh wins 22-19, and my confidence ranking is 12th of 16. It's 52.9%. The next game on the slate maybe is the most interesting one this week when Houston goes to Minnesota. The Texans quarterback CJ Stroud is very likely to see the blitz. My college friend Brian Flores has called it at the highest rate in the NFL since the beginning of last season. Go BC. He's averaged more than 43% blitz in 12 of 19 games, but maybe this is a trend buster for him because Stroud has the 4th highest yard per attempt average, top 10 in success rate. And by the way, when he targets Nico Collins, they have a league-leading 18.7 completion percentage over expected. That is the most among quarterback wide receiver duos who faced at least 10 blitz attempts. So fun. On the Vikings side of the ball, I love this Sam Darnold story, and the math loves how he targets players in the slot. He's done it on 38% of attempts, the 6th highest rate, and when doing so, he has the 3rd highest yard per attempt average at 11.9. Oh, and he also has a perfect 158.3 passer rating when blitzed this season. Bottom line, the delta between the pass catchers with Jordan Addison out and the pass stoppers for Houston, including Derek Stingley Jr. and rookie corner Kamari Lassiter, who's allowed a 0 passer rating as the nearest defender in coverage, compared to that of Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs and company, versus a very stout Minnesota defense, means advantage Texans. Final score, Houston wins this one by 4, 24-20, and confidence-wise, this ranks 9th in my model. Next up is Chicago at Indianapolis. On the Bears side of things, the blitz has been problematic for the offense so far. In fact, pressures have been problematic overall. The Bears' offensive line surrendered 23 pressures on 48 dropbacks, 11 of which were quick pressures. That was both the most across the league in week 2. The Colts are likely to be without DeForest Buckner, maybe also Leatu Latu, which changes the blitz and pressure in Chicago's favor. Indianapolis has struggled to generate pressure when not blitzing. They have a 27 pressure rate with 4 or fewer pass rushers. That ranks 20th in the league through 2 weeks. So when you have a guy like DeForest Buckner out, he led the team in pressures in 2023 at 66. That could make things a little bit easier for the rookie Caleb Williams to navigate. On the Colts side of things, Jonathan Taylor finished week 2 with the second highest yards after contact per carry at 6.2 in the league. The Bears defense allowed 3.8 such yards in week 1, but only 2.7 per in week 2. They also contacted the ball carrier behind the line of scrimmage on 59.1% of plays. So that's the highest rate in a game so far this season, but Indianapolis is better suited to not let that happen than Houston was. Bottom line here, time for Caleb to get his first passing touchdown in the NFL, in large part due to a much better opportunity for the Bears to run the ball. The Colts have allowed the most rushing yards, 474, the most rushing plays resulting in 5 or more rushing yards over expected at 12, and also the injuries don't help them solve this run-stopping problem. Final score, Chicago wins. Here it is again. Ready? 22-21. This ranks 14th in confidence for me at 51.2%. Knowledge nugget list number 2 are 5 touchdown scorers, some less obvious guys with elevated odds to see the end zone based on matchup, recent trends, things you need to know. First is DeAndre Swift. Told you why against the Colts. 2, Zamir White versus Carolina. 3, Kyle Pitts versus Kansas City. 4, Rashid Shaheed versus Philadelphia. And 5, Amari Cooper versus the Giants. I understand he's only had 5 catches for 27 yards so far, but that brings me to my next game. The Giants head to Cleveland for a matchup with the Browns. On New York's side of the ball, the Giants have blitzed at the 8th highest rate, 30.6%, but they've allowed 14 of 14 attempts to be caught for 221 yards, which is the most yards, along with 2 touchdowns, making them the only team to not force an incompletion when blitzing this season. The good news is that the Giants have generated the 10th highest pressure rate in the league this season, 35.5. Dex, my guy, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau all have at least 6 pressures. On Cleveland's side of the ball, Myles Garrett leads the NFL with 20 turnovers caused from pressure since 2020. That's 4 more than any other player. He has 323 total pressures since 2020. That's number 1 in the NFL per Next Gen Stats. That number is mind-blowing, so just marinate on it because it's going to be like 350 in no time at all. Bottom line here, the trenches are everything. Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin, the Browns tackles, could be playing, which would change the Browns offensive line, which has allowed pressure on 40.4% of dropbacks. That's 5th highest. For the Giants to get the upset, their best route is to smother the Browns O-line, especially on early downs. Final score, Cleveland wins 24-17, and this ranks 6th in my confidence ranking at 57.5%. The 1-1 Philadelphia Eagles head down to New Orleans to face the 2-0 New Orleans Saints, just like everyone thought would happen ahead of the season. On the Eagles side of the ball, rookie Cam Jurgens, he's allowed just 2 pressures on 75 pass blocking snaps. That's a 2.7 pressure rate, which is awesome. And neither of those were quick pressures, so ones that happen in under 2.5 seconds. Good news for Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, for everyone really on this team. On New Orleans side of the ball, Derek Carr leads the NFL in passer rating, 142.4, passing touchdowns, 5, yards per attempt, 11.4. Things are good. Clint Kubiak loves to call play action. In fact, 80.5% of their offensive plays have been run or play action, highest in the NFL. And for Carr, 45.2% of dropbacks, that is all play action, highest since Next Gen Stats has been tracking. Carr is crushing it with 192 yards, 2 touchdowns. And by the way, he only threw 3 such touchdowns all of last season. Outside the tackles, runs are good. The Saints rushers have 271 yards, most in the league for a 5.6 average and 4 touchdowns. Whew, the offense is humming. Bottom line, Derek Carr has only been under pressure on 23.8% of dropbacks, which is his lowest in the Next Gen Stats era. My models indicate that contrary to a trend where the Eagles have been allowing a lot of yards on downfield passes, 297 second most, and Carr has been connecting for touchdowns there, he has 4 with 1 interception on such passes, their ability to get pressure on Carr will change the situation just enough to pull off the upset. Final score, Philadelphia wins 26-25, and my confidence ranking, it's 15th of 16. So not exceedingly confident, but a closer game than expected. Next up, Denver at Tampa Bay. Broncos receiver Josh Reynolds leads Denver with 9 receptions and 138 receiving yards on 13 targets. In this week of fantasy injuries, he could be a good pickup. On Tampa Bay's side, Baker Mayfield leads the NFL with 265 yards and 4 touchdowns when targeting receivers in the slot, where he sent 43% of his attempts so far. That's the 3rd highest rate. Godwin, who we were told would be back in the slot this season, has been there on 57% of routes, up from 38 last season. proving Todd Bowles is not a lying liar who lies. But also, this should give you a clue. If you believe that Pat Surtain will travel with Mike Evans, this is more of a Chris Godwin kind of fantasy day. Bottom line, guess which defense has used creepers at the highest rate this season? Yep, the Bucs at 12%. They've also blitzed at the 5th highest rate, 34%, dropped the defensive lineman into coverage at the 4th highest rate, 35%. Point being, this is advanced stuff even for seasoned quarterbacks and forecast to give a sizable edge to the Bucs. Final score, Tampa Bay wins 23-16, and this ranks 4th of 16 in confidence. Next up, Green Bay heads to Nashville for a matchup with the Titans. The Packers use a design run on 73.1% of plays against the Colts in week 2. That brought their total to 13 design rushes that have netted 10 or more yards. That is massive. It leads the league very clearly. The Packers ball carriers are also averaging 4.3 yards after contact per carry. That's 3rd highest on design runs. And the Titans have allowed design runs to earn more yards than expected in 41% of plays. That ranks 6th highest. Now, I know that the Colts run defense is super generous, but this is another good spot for Green Bay on the ground. Titans receiver Calvin Ridley hauled in 4 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown against the Jets. 3 of those for 71 yards, and that touchdown came against Sauce Gardner. By the way, that touchdown was the most improbable of Will Levis's career so far, with only a 16.5 expected completion rate. This brings up an interesting way to approach the Packers defense, because Levis is high risk, high reward, but so is the Pack, with both the most interceptions so far this season at 5, but also having allowed the most yards after the catch over expected at 83. This stat helps normalize for regular coverage spacing differences, so man versus zone. Bottom line, you'll notice if you haven't already that my model tends to forecast wins more often for teams with a run game advantage and better pass defense. This is because that's how teams formulaically have won more in the past, higher probability wins. But also this assumes no big other problem area like a super leaky run defense. This is about as close as a game gets for me because risky operators like Levis and the Packers defense cause big swings in both directions. So it's like strikeout or home run for the baseball analogy. The Titans offensive line creates the small amount of difference. Last week, we saw right tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere set a next-gen stat era record, allowing 13 pressures on 35 pass blocking snaps. And now he gets Rashawn Gary as a matchup, who finished last season with the 9th best pressure rate at 17.4. This season, he's tracking at 10.6. Point being here, this ekes out the win for Green Bay, 21-20. But by the way, my confidence in here very clearly is 16 of 16, and it's 50.3%. Let's cleanse our lots of math talk by keeping it really simple with our next list. Here are 4 more obvious touchdown scorers. Josh Jacobs, he will. Jamar Chase, yeah, he will too. Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, also yep. The Panthers head to the desert to take on the Raiders. For Carolina, zone coverages could be an improved opportunity for the Andy Dalton-led Panthers. Since the beginning of last season, on 254 dropbacks, Young has 0 touchdowns with 8 interceptions versus zone looks. And even though it's just a one-game note here, Andy Dalton does have a ton of data, and this kind of shows you what it looks like against zone. Against the Seahawks in week 3 last year, he faced zone on 81% of dropbacks, completing 31 of 47 for 285 of his 361 and both touchdowns. Yes, it was a 10-point loss, but that's a much bigger improvement against zone. This is risky for fantasy, but this is a spot where Adam Thielen or Deontay Johnson could be a usable play. I am not a big narrative fantasy player, but there are trade rumors about Thielen, so you could read that as a chance to make him happy or look attractive to a trade partner. I'm just saying you could consider pass catchers here if you need to. On Las Vegas' side of things, I think I was just a week early here. However, Brock Bowers did become just the 3rd tight end in the past 10 seasons to earn 9+ receptions and 90+ yards in a game last week. But here we go. Bowers already leads all tight ends in targets with 17, receptions 15, and receiving yards with 156. He leads in receptions over expected with 2.4, touches in motion, downfield receptions, downfield yards. He's 4 of 89 yards. By the way, the touchdown, it's happening this week. I'm just going to keep saying that until it happens. Bottom line, both defenses have some room for improvement. The Panthers have allowed the 2nd most rush yards, 399, and the 3rd most rushing first downs with 23, and are tied for the 3rd most rushing touchdowns allowed at 3. The Raiders have allowed the most yards on missed tackles this season so far with 217, and they have two guys in the top two in missed tackles, with linebacker Divine Diablo with 7 and safety Marcus Epps with 6, which is first and tied for second most respectively. However, the Panthers have the fewest quarterback pressures at 13, and they've accounted for the second highest blitz rate, 36.7. And the Raiders have Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins. Final score, Raiders win this one 24-17, and this ranks 5th in my confidence at 57.5%. Next up, the Miami Dolphins take the very long trip to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seattle Seahawks. On Miami's side of the ball, Devon Achane has forced 15 missed tackles this season. That's the second most among any ball carrier in the league. This is going to be a test for Mike McDonald's defense, which has been seemingly very improved in this area. After missing the most tackles, 143, and subsequently allowing the most yards on missed tackles with 1,118 in 2023, the Seahawks have only missed 13 so far for 50 yards lost, which is the fourth fewest. On the Seahawks side, Boye Mafe leads the NFL with 14 quarterback pressures after earning exactly 7 in each game so far. Half of his pressures have been quick pressures, which are those occurring sub 2.5 seconds, and he's accounted for 32.6% of the Seahawks pressures. That's the second highest rate in the league in terms of a single player's share on their team. Bottom line, one area to watch for the Seahawks is the offensive line allowing quick pressures, as Geno has been pressured at a league-high average speed of 2.19 seconds. Despite the Dolphins defense having the quickest time to pressure in the NFL at 2.41 seconds, they only have 14 total pressures, which is tied for second fewest. Between injuries and Seattle having greater odds of answering the pressure question either via the run or things like dressed-up motion passes, advantage goes to the home team. Final score, Seattle wins 25-21, and my confidence ranking is 11th out of 16 at 53.9%. The Detroit Lions head out to the desert, not the Las Vegas desert, but the Arizona desert, to take on the Cardinals this week. The Lions have only earned 18 rushing yards over expected, which is dead average, meaning 16th in the NFL. But looking into the run game shows something interesting, and that's that their rushing success rate, which relates runs to maintaining drives and possessions via first downs and touchdowns, is the highest in the NFL at 55.2%. As for the situations they've been in, they faced a light box on just 36% of runs. That's the 5th lowest rate in the league. The matchup this week is against a Cardinals defense that has allowed the 3rd fewest rushing yards over expected, but given up the 4th highest rushing success rate at 49.1%. On the Cardinals side of the ball, Kyler Murray went a perfect 5 for 5 on deep passes against the Rams in week 2. That brings his season total to 5. Those are 20-plus air yard attempts, by the way. He played 8 games last season and completed only 7 such passes. That brings his total to 7 since the beginning of last season, 8 of which have come against single high safety looks, 3 resulting in a touchdown. The Lions have used single high looks on 70% of opposing dropbacks. That's the 4th highest rate, but they have yet to allow a deep completion. So this is a strength-on-strength situation. Bottom line, Detroit gets back on track due to offensive rushing efficiencies and defensive pressure potential. While Aiden Hutchinson leads the league with 5.5 sacks, and Kyler Murray, we know, is exceptionally elusive, the number of defenders at the second level, like a Derek Barnes or even Jack Campbell, should Alex Anzalone not be able to play, are well set up to succeed in this one. One tendency to track: the Cards use 13 personnel, or 3 tight end sets, at the second highest rate. They average 7.3 yards. The rest of the league is like 3.8. And they have 3 touchdowns, including both of Marvin Harrison Jr. So if they put that formation out there, look for a touchdown. Final score, Detroit wins 27-23, and this ranks 8th, or right in the middle of the confidence, at 54.6%. The Baltimore Ravens head to Dallas in search of their first win this season. For Baltimore, Lamar Jackson has completed 12 of 17 intermediate passes. These are 10 to 19 air yard passes for 225 yards and 2 touchdowns this season. The Cowboys defense has allowed a 64.1 expected completion percentage on such throws. That's the 3rd highest rate in the NFL. So target the intermediate level. On the Cowboys side of the equation, since the start of last season, Micah Parsons has generated a league-leading 21% pressure rate. Parsons aligns on the left side of the defensive line for 53% of snaps. So watch out for right guard Daniel Falele, who ranks 7th highest in terms of allowing pressure so far at his position with an 11.2 rate. No matter what, though, it's really just like advantage Parsons. Bottom line here is Derrick Henry, and of course Lamar Jackson, are the difference maker in the run game because you run right at pressure. Coach speak, but also true. The Cowboys have contacted opposing rushers behind the line of scrimmage on just 31% of carries this season. That's the fourth lowest rate. And they've allowed the fourth most yards after contact per carry at 3.9 this season. Advantage Derrick Henry, advantage Lamar Jackson. Final score, Baltimore wins 26-24. Confidence ranks 13th of 16. I've got one more of my little nugget dumps for you here. And I'm calling this one, is the trend your friend or enemy? Not necessarily predictive, but fun bar nuggets nonetheless. The first is that the Ravens have an NFL high 10 losses when leading by 7 or more points in the fourth quarter since 2021. Number two is that the Steelers are 8-1 in games when they force multiple takeaways. They're 0-3 when they don't force any takeaways, and 4-3 when they force one takeaway. On to the Rams. The San Francisco 49ers come to town facing a very depleted Rams team, but we'll start with the Niners. Jordan Mason has forced 20 missed tackles so far this season. That is the most among running backs. He averages 5.2 yards per carry on outside rushes, and he has 130 yards after contact. Ridiculous. On the Rams side, Matthew Stafford struggled when Cooper Kupp didn't play last season, finishing with a 77.6 passer rating without Kupp compared to 101.2 with Kupp on the field. Bottom line, I'm just going to keep it simple for this one. Even without Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, the Rams just have too many injuries to overcome the Niners. A good note here for Brandon Ayuk fantasy owners is that he does project to score a touchdown. Final score, Niners win 24-15, and my confidence ranks first of 16. On to Sunday Night Football, where the Chiefs head to Atlanta to face the Falcons. On Kansas City's side of things, Patrick Mahomes has averaged just 4.6 air yards per attempt. That is the second fewest in the NFL, but he's already tied his deep touchdown total from 2022 to 2023 combined with 2. The Falcons have a 22.2 quarterback pressure percentage that ranks lowest in the NFL. And you know what happens without pressure for Mahomes? 106.8 passer rating and 3 touchdowns so far this season. On the Falcons side of the ball, this show and lots of other shows were saying, just run play action. That's all Kirk Cousins needs to run. And they did it. They did it 8 times. That must have been the reason that they beat the Eagles, right? Well, Cousins went 5 of 8 for 52 yards, no touchdowns, but no picks in week 2. And by the way, without play action, he was 15 of 21 for 189 and 2 touchdowns. We know nothing. But we do see that the Chiefs have a 23.7 pressure percentage. That's 31st in the NFL, only better than Atlanta. And Cousins is a different man in both situations. 2 interceptions, 47.9 passer rating when he's pressured, but without 3 touchdowns, 113.2. Final score, Kansas City 24-21, and this ranks 10th in my model in terms of confidence at 54% of simulations having the Chiefs win. Our Monday Night Football doubleheader starts in Buffalo when the Jaguars come to town. Last season, Trevor Lawrence had the second most yards in the NFL using quick passes. Remember, those are the sub 2.5 second passes. He had 1,992 yards off of them. This year has been a different story, though. He's been using more 5-step dropbacks, and it also just hasn't been working when he's tried those quick passes. In week 1, he went 4 of 7 for 47 yards in them, and last week he went 8 of 15 for 49 yards. This is a small sample size, but he's only averaging 4.4 yards per attempt on quick passes. And I know you're going to say, but last week was against the Browns defense, who's awesome, and they are. But they also allowed Dak to go 11 of 17 for 101 and a touchdown in week 1 on such pass attempts. On the Bills side of the equation, Josh Allen currently ranks number 1 amongst quarterbacks in expected points added per dropback with a 0.48. He ranks 22nd in yards with 371, has 3 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions to round that all out. Jacksonville has allowed the most yards after the catch with 329 and played the most man at 52.6%. I told you, I think Dalton Kincaid should score a touchdown this week. This is why. He's great against man. He's also great with the yak. Bottom line, Josh Allen is erasing the missing production due to injury on the defense. The offensive strategy is working with the highest percentage of run plays called in the NFL since Joe Brady took over last season. The offensive line is doing their job to the tune of ranking 6th best at limiting pressure, and James Cook ranks 2nd in the NFL with 5.77 scrimmage yards per touch since 2022. Final score, Buffalo wins this one 27-20, and this ranks 3rd in confidence with the Bills winning in 58.6% of simulations. And last but not least, the Commanders head to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. On Washington's side of the ball, last week in a home win against the Giants, Brian Robinson rushed for 109 and a touchdown on 10 carries between the tackles for a 10.9 yard per carry average. The Bengals have allowed the third most rushing yards between the tackles with 168, and they're tied for the fourth most runs of 10 plus allowed in the league. On the Bengals side of the ball, through 2 games, Jamar Chase only has a 5.8 air yard average depth of target, which is down from 8.6 last season. He's only been targeted on 2 of his 22 vertical routes so far, both of which he caught for 40 total yards. This is a game where vertical route efficiency forecasts to see an uptick, as the Commanders have allowed 26 touchdowns on vertical routes since the start of last season, which is 8 more than any other defense. Bottom line, even though Jaden Daniels has 112 rushing yards on scrambles, which is just 5 behind Lamar Jackson, who leads the league, and so far the Bengals have allowed 63 rushing yards on scrambles, the passing game plan limits the Commanders, as 41.2% of Daniels' pass attempts have been behind the line of scrimmage. That's the highest rate in the NFL. Final score, Cincinnati wins it 29-20, and this ranks second in my model in terms of confidence, with 61.1% of simulations resulting in a Cincinnati win. Thank you so much again. Keep your feedback, comments, everything coming. I love the conversation. Remember the super secret, sexy Excel sheets. Maybe not sexy, but remember them. And I really appreciate it. I'll see you next week. Good luck this week. Have fun watching the games.